Just waiting on to see if some other people show up. Hello to the folks that are already here. I'm just flipping through one of these books I plan on bringing with me to the show this weekend. This was drawn by my buddy Joe St. Pierre. Yeah. Should be a good show. Lots of good artists. Both Sam De La Rosa and Keith Williams inked this issue that my old friend Paul Ryan had signed a number of years ago before he passed away. Some vintage Bagley, because I've never met Bagley before. Mike Royer's going to be there. He's the inker and letterer on all the 70s Kirby stuff. Commandy, he did a chunk of that. Bruce Barry took over at a certain point, but like Mr. Miracle, The New Gods, that was all Mike Royer, who doesn't do a lot of shows. You know, when you look at one of these old Kirby comics, you just see the absolute, force that is on display. I mean, you open with a splash like that and see right there, inked and lettered by Mike Royer. He'll be at Little Giant Comic Show. This is the second issue of the 1970s Black Panther, and as you can see, it goes from this is a classic Kirby formula, going from a splash to a two-page splash, because you think you're at a splash page, how could it get even bigger? And Kirby and Simon actually were the ones that really were the forerunners of the two-page splash, going back into the golden age. So like some of their golden age work actually had two-page splashes that, because the printing was such, they would actually plan for there being a little gap in the middle with some of their compositions. Beautiful old ads. I enjoyed the King Solomon's frog right here. You can see that's a classic Royer sound effect right there. And also he had different tenors of boldness that he would use in his sentences. And I assume that was because Jack was writing these and he would actually denote where to add emphasis. And you see the word object is slightly bold, mine, dare, slightly bold, brass frog, obviously, arrogant, rightfully stolen, all bold. And that's sort of given a cadence of speech. You're actually giving more information. It's not just, like when, much as EC Comics is like the forerunner of artistry into comics to a certain degree, those typeset pages left a lot of meat on the bone for there to be even more. But yeah, that's the 70s Black Panther that I'll probably bring up to get signed. And David Michelinie, who I've never actually met, but I've read a ton of his comics back to when I was a kid, will be there. And yeah, he did some Aquaman, so I'll bring some Aquaman for him to sign. So yeah, seeing my pals there. Here's that Gambit that I did for fun. I kind of just pretended like I was at a show, since this is my first show of the year. I didn't want to be too rusty going in. Yeah, Gambit was cool to people my age. He might not be cool to kids these days, but he was definitely cool to people my age. So, but it's this Saturday. It's in Concord, New Hampshire. It's the show. This is just ink on Bristol with a little bit of whiteout pen. Okay, we're going to be drawing ROM Space Knight tonight. For those unfamiliar with ROM, it was a licensed comic that Marvel put out in the 70s and 80s. Mostly 80s, I think. It might have started in 80, but I don't remember. That's what Google's for. You can find out that level of minutia. But Sal Buscema, Aiken and Garvey, and then Ditko, P. Craig Russell, and a handful of other finishers were the artists that really carried that series. So they battled these characters called the Dire Wraiths. I was going to have a couple of them reaching up at ROM and him, you know. Here's our composition. We're going to go with that wedge shape that works so well for everything. We're going to have some hands reaching up. They have these creepy. I don't like to get too in-depth when I'm first starting, especially lately. That's been something I've really been focusing on, is just staying loose, keeping the energy. Excuse me, I had a late work day, so needed a swig of water. ROM has kind of like a bucket head. So we're going to just plop that in there. He's got like big bucket shoulder arms. Bring that down. Hey, Gregory, good to see you. Been following your journey. I hope that they're taking good care of you. It's glad to see some people went to visit you today, or a couple days ago. They bring you some reading material, some Conan comics or something, help you pass the time. I have the ROM zappy gun. I'd have to pull his head back a little bit, but just gonna stay loose. Gonna have a little confidence that we can pull it together. It's been a long day, but the beauty of ROM is that if you're pretty good at geometric shapes, you can draw a pretty good ROM. Got to know your volumes. Got to know where things fit together, but yeah, lately I've just been drawing so much of my own characters, and I've been writing more. Working at most of my time is spent working on Undersea Hero. Anytime I get any time at all to just draw it, I just get cranking on that because I've got a lot of pages to go. We made good progress. We're in the 20s now, which is good. I've got to get some reference up. I was looking for just some issues of ROM, but I was actually having trouble finding some. It's crazy when I'm organizing my collection. That's when it's been difficult to find some stuff. Now, see, the Frank Miller first issue cover to me is not a great image of ROM to pull from because it varied so greatly over time. Like, see, there's a good shot of ROM's suit. That's probably from the Handbook of the Marvel Universe. So he had like big boots. That was when the X-Men crossed over. I think we're drawing him a little too big for this size sheet of paper. Get my eraser without making too much noise. It's easy enough. I have been trying to draw larger, just as a concerted effort to be more bold. Hey Jason, how are you? those things in your neck of the woods. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to look at some references. We're marching along here. Michael Golden did some beautiful ROM covers. There's a fun one. That's not a Golden one. I think that's actually Al Milgrom. But yeah, that's a nice cover. But yeah, I've been doing the Little Giant show. I've done most of the ones they've had. I don't know if I've been to all of them, but I've been to most of them, and it's just a terrific show for, especially if you're a buyer. If you're a comic book buyer and you want comics and you don't necessarily just want Spider-Man, you want to find the off the beaten path type comics like Charlton Comics or AC Comics or Atlas Comics or anything that's not big two and it's rare. I've had very good luck looking at this show. I mean, it's not all cheap. You got some dealers traveling a long way and they got great stuff. So, you got to be prepared to, pay a fair value for a lot of things. I never have a ton of time to look around because I'm working my table, but I'm going to make a concerted effort this trip up to take it in a little bit more than I have in the past. What have we got here? Wait, up. Jay asked, "What's my favorite Paul Simon song?" That's an odd question. Yep. No, and this is going to be just for Jason, just to thank you for having me as a guest. I love doing just drawings for gifts. I do it. I don't have enough time to do it as much as I would like to. There's something pure about it, especially if people aren't expecting it. Let's move this a little further. Hey, Patrick. You're just telling me now, so it's good downer. Good downer at the beginning there, Pat. Appreciate it. Good. I have some good Trina Robbins stories from San Diego Comic-Con, so I'm very sorry to hear that. Yeah, she and Bob were friends. Hey, Aaron, how are you? Good to see you, man. I still think it's too big. I think we'll just have to do the old flipperoo. This is why you always look on the back of my drawings. At least if you order a drawing from me at any point, there's usually something on the back from me trying to do probably too much on. Jay says he's at a concert and the band did a cover. Hey, Dennis, how are you? There's a lot of people in here tonight, so it was a long day for me. It started, working a full day. I ended up staying late at work doing an assignment that took me out on the water. So I have been all over Massachusetts today by land and sea. Try not to do too much here. Let me just relax a little bit. There we go. That's a much better. See that shoulder joint? I know you can't see it because you don't know what I'm doing yet, but that's so much better. As far as the spatial relationship between the head and where that shoulder is based on where we're going to end up. You just have to trust me on that one. Got his foot here. And we're going to have, dire wraiths reaching up for him. For those that read the comic, they'll know who the dire wraiths are. He's got a weird ray gun, but I'm going to try to simplify it just a little bit, just for spacing purposes right now. We can cut into it and make it the weird panel gun that he has in a minute. Hey, Dennis. Yeah, definitely. If you're in Concord, it's at the ice arena there. It's all day Saturday. Like I said, I showed off some of the books I'm going to take to try to get signed by other creators while I'm there. And I'll see St. Pierre. I'll see Rich Woodall's going to be there. So some local guys, Jesse Lundberg, who's going to be helping me with the flats on Undersea Hero when we get to those points. Yeah, it should be a good time. I actually just booked a hotel for Friday, so it's a little easier. I was thinking about driving up at the first thing Saturday morning, but I'm getting too old for the 4 a.m. runs to an all-day show to drive home. Pat asks if I have any plans for Free Comic Book Day. I have not been invited to any stores as of yet, and I haven't reached out to any, so I might be able to just go to a store and pick up a few comics and buy a few things and support my LCS, which I have not really done since Free Comic Book Day started, but you never know. I'm guessing I might get a phone call from NEC or something to be like, hey, can you be at one of our stores last minute, which they're good at asking me at the last minute for that kind of stuff. I've started to ask for lunch if it's a last minute. Hey, can you at least throw me a slice of pizza if it's a last minute request? Nothing major. I don't need a gourmet meal, but if you could hook an artist up who's gonna do free sketches for your customers with a piece of pizza. Dennis asked if I'm bringing any TMNT. I'm not sure yet. I have not packed, but if you would like me to bring one for you, I will make sure to bring one for you. I'm trying to not bring too much stuff to my table these days. I was guilty of having just like a wall of stuff on my table in years past, and I'm trying to avoid that. Also, I don't have time to like price everything. Tonight I got the stream. Tomorrow I've got full day of work, then loading the car, and I've had no time to do any of that stuff. So, but yes, if you would like me to bring one for you, I will be happy to bring one for you. I usually do a last call post when I'm packing, like, hey, if there's anything anybody wants specific, but you're here, so you can just say so. I don't have every cover I've ever done, but I'll see what I've got. I think I've got some of the animated adventures I might have. I know I have a handful of the expensive one. The issue 51, the Rhode Island cover, that one's an expensive comic book. Been working on my hip joints too lately. That's been a real recent development. I'm just trying to trust my hand, just trying to trust it a little bit. Looks like we're too close. Let's see if we have any. Let's see if we can pull back a little bit. There we go. Now you can see the whole sheet of paper. And the camera's not like right in my face, which that's nice. I always thought his ROM as like the little engine that could kind of character. Like he was never the biggest guy, so I never drew him like super bulky. I just tried to draw him sleek. I think that I want to pull this leg forward. Yeah, pull that forward. Hey, Matt. Pat says he did a podcast called Imaginary Worlds, and they recently did a bonus episode on the TMNT origin. And Peter Laird turned 70 in January. Yeah, Pete's getting up there. I mean, he's pretty well retired. I mean, he makes pottery. He's hangs out with the grandkids kind of guy at this point. Does the like very rare close to home convention, but doesn't really draw much anymore. But he's a sweet, nice guy every time I've met him. So hey man, good to see you. You are here while it's live. And we are cruising our way to the 100th episode of Live Drawing. We are at episode 92, so we are a mere 8 weeks away from our 100th episode. I'm going to try to talk to some artists this weekend at the show to see if I can twist their arm into coming on to the 100th episode so it can be more of a hangout. Jay, who's in the audience tonight, said he'd be on, so it's always good to have my buddy Jay on. We've been doing conventions and comics together for a million years, so how have I been? I'm doing okay. Stuff is busy, so got some of the big stuff that has been stressing me out finished. Stuff like the last year's taxes are done. Well, you know, the ones that are due like next week for most people, those are all done. Jonathan, if you want to pop on for 100, Desiree, if you're out there, people who have been on, like hanging out for so long, if anybody wants to pop on, you know, we can make it happen. Lower his trunk down a little bit. The one thing that makes Rom easier to draw than most characters is he doesn't really have hands. He has like mitts. Do I plan to draw a new Zodiacs cover? Anytime Joe wants me to do anything, I'm ready to go. So if Joe wants to have me do one or a pinup or anything, he knows all he has to do is tell me that there's a blank page I can fill. So, you know, I know you've been working with him, so if you want to put in a good word, otherwise I will bug him this weekend. I will mention it. I will mention that the greater public, inquiring minds want to know. Jonathan asked if he could show old me art. I would need a beverage for that portion of the broadcast, but yeah, I mean, if you wanted to show old, horribly drawn robots that you at one time foolishly threw money at me for, um, you are welcome to do so, sir. I should just try to draw. I mean, I know I owe you that Spidey cover you gave me, and I have it sitting right here. You wanted like old school, but I should try to draw a robot, especially since I've read the Daniel Warren Johnson stuff, and I can see a way to do it organically rather than having to just draw mechanically. The weird thing about ROM that always throws me off is there's like no belt. Is there somewhere where people can order commissions? From me, no, not at the moment. All of my time is dedicated really to Undersea Hero. I've even like reached out to people who were on a list that I had going and refunded, or just told them that I can't do it. It's really, I've just fully committed to my own comic and that one getting it done, because it's a lot of work. 50 some odd pages, with just help on flats is a lot of work. I'm working my tail off to try to get it done, in the projected time from the Kickstarter. Undersea Hero is coming along fine. I did receive something absolutely breathtakingly beautiful in the mail. This is the original line art for the John Lucas variant. John is an incredible artist, and his influences are varied. His skill is elite. Like, I mean, just look at that beautiful, beautiful line art. Just the work on the gloves alone. I mean, and it's just, you see the coral, you see there's just little sea creatures here and there, and then you see there's Lord Crackus. And I wish more people would hit him up, just because he is so good. Like, and he's great at doing exaggerated, highly detailed work. I think he has more range than he's given credit for. I think he can do adventure, he can do humor, he can do like beautiful Wrightson-esque brushwork with like Graham Ingalls vibes, and he's done Deadpool, he's done all kinds of stuff, and he's a really just nice person. So if other people are looking for variant cover artists, I always recommend John. He always absolutely delivers, and he's usually open for commissions. And I've gotten several myself. I got a Solomon Kane from him. He worked on, for those of you that maybe only read, superhero comics, which is fine. He also worked on a book that my wife and I both love called American Splendor, which is written by Harvey Pekar and drawn by the likes of like Robert Crumb, Dean Haspiel. Tons of folks drew that book over the years. Val Mayerick. I actually never knew the right way to pronounce that. So Not sure how far we're going to get on this tonight, but we'll take it as far as we can go. I need to look up some dire wraiths. There you go. There's a good shot of those creepy monsters. Those are the dire wraiths from the old ROM comics. Am I an X-Men fan? Of course I am. Of course I am. If you didn't see, I drew a Gambit without anyone asking me to. Nobody probably wanting me to either, but yeah, you can see how creepy those big characters were. I don't have Disney Plus, so I have not seen it. I have the DVDs of the original X-Men series, the cartoon show. Had to get a chair. There we go. Yeah, I've never seen. I have not seen any of the Disney Plus stuff, so I have no opinion on it. But like, some of it's probably good, some of it's probably mediocre, some of it I have no idea. So people are always a little disappointed when they hear that at conventions, like that I'm not watching every episode of every show. I mean, it's an embarrassment of riches. There's just so many shows now, so many movies. There's more things than I ever would have time for. When I was a kid, if you got like a superhero movie every handful of years, you were lucky. I knew they had like the weird little mouths. And then they had like a thing that came up like that. And then they had like these tongues that were kind of cool. And then it's almost like a helmet on top, but it's all organic. And the dire wraiths got drawn all different sorts of ways, so like they varied over time. This is more in the John Romita Jr. direction when they showed up in X-Men. Hey Dennis, yeah, have a good night. Thanks for popping in. Jonathan, you're right. Any superhero show, the old Flash show when that was on, Freely Abrigo. I'm sorry if I butchered that name, but yeah, I use a blue pencil to start. That's generally my first inclination as far as taking a stab in a direction for drawing. Just something I got used to. It used to be that you did this so that if you photocopied it, it wouldn't show up on the final copy. So it's part of the printing process. But this elbow here, this one needs to actually come out a little bit. Right direction, just needed a bigger arm. There we go. We're actually going to take this drawing all the way to the edge. I know that drives some collectors crazy, but this drawing is just a gift, so I can be a little selfish on the execution. There you go. There's a big picture of one. Creepy. Hey, thanks, Dennis. Have a good night. All right, well, now what I generally do is I take a regular HB lead. I use a Kuretake, actually this is Uni lead. I use a Kuretake pens, but I use Japanese materials for a lot of stuff just because they make really excellent art supplies these days. Probably forever, since they have a long, rich artistic history. Beautiful work. And with the pencil, with this HB, you'll see me start to put in some more of the textures. I'll start adding, where things go. Our light sources are varied, so I'm probably gonna take this as my secondary. This is 2, but our primary light source is gonna be like in front. So it's gonna be coming up this way. So like this front panel to his face is gonna be almost white. But the side panel, we're going to be able to basically black out. And we want to just make interesting cuts and shapes with the shadows and the lighting. It's not just about matching the light source. It's about making graphical decisions that make an interesting composition. Like, I tend to break certain rules intentionally when I need to make a more interesting picture. Because to me, realism isn't the goal for my artwork. I'm not looking to make it look like something you'd find a picture of. That's not what I want. I want it to have its own internal, believable logic, but believability, but not realism, has generally been my motto. I think we're going to go heavy shadow on this. And it's metal, so it's going to have, a metallic finish to it. And that means that there's going to be, a front and a back, so there will be some rim lighting. And then we come back up here, and he's got these little lines on the side of his head. So I think the joke used to be that certain creators called him a toaster. And when I was a kid, I was not a ROM fan. I wasn't into it. I didn't like the comic. I didn't really give it a chance because it was just like licensed comics. I just wouldn't even give it a second look to, unless in the case of ROM, a creator whose work I was interested in was working on it, and that's really what happened. It was really the Ditko issues that drew me in, and then I ended up reading more. and I ended up enjoying, more than I expected to. He shows up in Power Man and Iron Fist. That's a great issue to track down. It's got a great Frank Miller cover. Yeah, there's a great shot of Dire Wraiths. They're globby, so I think I can get away with being a little bit more. Go back to my reference for ROM. I don't love that shot of his suit. I want to find one of the better shots of his suit. Like, here's a great one from when Ditko was inked by John Byrne. There's a great one. There we go. There's a great shot right there. That's a good reference shot. And you can see that he's squared off. The shoulders are just absolutely square. So that's where we're gonna, when we're inking, probably gonna have to get the ruler out. I always forget about the little shoulder bits. I do. I don't think they're necessary, but if they're in the reference, we'll abide by it. Jonathan has a good point. It's a longer quote, so I'm going to pop it up on the screen. The one thing about ROM was he was fully integrated into the Marvel Universe. I keep wondering if they will use him like that again, if they have the rights for new material. I had heard somewhere that because they reprinted that X-Men issue, that they had gotten the rights back. Now, having been in the game for as long as I have, I've learned that each property is handled differently, even within the same company of licensors. So, like, for instance, if you were a fledgling publishing company, we won't name names, and you were planning on beginning a licensing deal with, let's say, I don't know, King Features. They're the folks that have Mandrake the Magician, they have Flash Gordon, and they've worked with many comic book publishing partners over the years, many different ones. Charlton, they tried making their own comics for a while, Dynamite. They're not going to give you the same rules for Mandrake that they're going to give you for Flash. They just aren't. And I have to imagine that it would be a similar situation for Hasbro, which I believe owns ROM, Micronauts, Transformers now, because they've all merged, all these companies. Oh, there's a little down angle there. It's interesting. I don't think I noticed that. He's got like a little down angle, which is weird. Because if he leaned forward, it would be poking him in the stomach. But hey, I did not design him. But again, I'm thinking of a literal answer to something that is cooler than that. So shame on me for thinking of something so mundane in place of good design. There we go. You can see it's starting to come together. We're starting to see some ROM Space Knight in here. Now, because of where I've chosen my light sources, I don't have to put as much detail on the front plates as I would have. So we will keep on keeping on. And with this version of ROM, the weird part of ROM, and this is again limitations in design, you can see his shoulder and you can see most of his arm, but you never see his armpit. So there's a little bit of a lapse in that portion of his design. And not all suits work from all angles. I've been guilty of designing stuff that when you wanted to look at it from a certain angle, it did not work so well. So we're going to just take some risks and see where it takes us. Now the middle of the arm goes in there. This would actually, if this were a person, his pectoral muscles would be something like that. It'd be coming down, collarbone. Hey, Brian, good to see you. Sorry I haven't written you back. I will shoot you a note after the stream. Look forward to seeing you and the kiddos at the show this weekend. My free time for messaging today was sucked up by Bob, so I was on the phone with him on my lunch break. With we don't know what we're doing yet, but just in case, do some work, some logistical work for us, some clerical work for us. Okay. Hey, if we got this penciled today, I could easily see myself getting it inked tomorrow. So we're just gonna keep chopping away at it, and hopefully we end up with something kind of nice. That's the idea. You want to make things nice for people, or at least I do. And I would rather, have somebody wait a little longer so that it comes out nicer. That's just me. And I'm happy to do that myself. When it comes to commissions or whatever, I'm an easy client when it comes to comic book stuff, especially these days. Yeah, he kept texting me, and I was like, I cannot talk to you right now. I am in a meeting. I am sitting in a meeting right now. So I called him on my lunch break. He's got little rivets, under these little vents. I want to add a line here. I don't like the way this is, but there is a line there. Okay, cool. Perfect. And we don't want it to line up with that because we want it to show depth. Hey, it's classic. It's vintage Bob. There will be a time, when I'm not getting those phone calls. So that's what Jeff how he likes to frame it. For those that haven't met Jeff McClellan, he or backed his Planet Comics Kickstarter, he is legitimately and everybody says this about everybody, but I don't know a nicer person. I don't. So there's a Lewis Black sketch about him having to follow the nicest, sweetest person ever with his act, and it just makes him feel terrible. He's like, I'm a terrible person after that. Something to that effect. All right. They didn't add there's not a ton of definition to ROM. He's mostly just tubes. So we're going to try to, at least with our textures, our metal textures, give it some definition and some direction. Right now I'm just really trying to chop through here and make sure we've got, enough there so that it reads as solid. There we go. And then he's got his boots go up over his knees because it was the times, we'll say. So we're gonna downplay that a little bit because I'm not a huge fan of that. But we will stay true enough so that I can, if someone's like, you messed up his boots, which people do incessantly on some of my drawings. But yeah, just remembering the preferred light source is here. So we're gonna actually have basically a cast shadow from where the leg is until there. Also just being more bold with some of my line choices. So not being afraid of that one heavy line that just really just boom, just sticks out. That's something that one of the artists that'll be there this weekend was so good at when he was inking Jack Kirby is he would just put that big line just and not be afraid of it at all. Where the line almost becomes sculptural. Now what I need to add is something right here that shows where that hip is. So I might even square that line off a little bit more. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down like this. We're going at it. We're going to just have a lot of black right here. It comes in and connects right there. And then it creates a separation there. And you see it's just becoming more solid as we go along. It takes some work. For me, I'm not one of those people that can just picture it in my head and then just be tracing it. That's really difficult. And I'm very jealous of the people that are able to do it. What is in your mind while you're drawing? MC says hi, hello. Welcome to our live drawing. The road to Little Giant Comic Show and drawing some ROM Space Knight tonight. So, gonna pull this down, a little more mustard on that elbow, like that. I think the middle of his biceps would be like here where it connects. So we gotta come back down like that. There we go. And then we're gonna have More black on this side. Again, we're trying to create separation. And the beauty of pen and ink is there's only two answers. You know, it's either black or it's white. All right, we've got his little blaster here. And I swear, I've seen that blaster drawn like 100 different ways. See, like there's the Frank Miller blaster where it kind of looks like a phaser from Next Generation. And then there's this one. I wish I could find a Ditko one. Let me see if I can find the Ditko. I'm sure people have like scanned whole issues, but I don't want to mess with that. Oh yeah, here we go. Inked by P. Craig Russell. Look at that. Beautiful. So I'm going to go more in this direction with the blaster. For some reason, I thought it had like a panel in the front, but I was wrong. See, I would love to have an arm just coming up this way. So maybe this guy's arm, I don't know. We'll figure it out on the fly. That's the beauty of doing sketches. It's not locked into any one thing. And we can keep working on it. We can just keep coming up with ideas. Okay. There's like a big square piece over this chunk of his hand. It's probably like that. And then comes down like, it's like two cubes. And then we have like a big blaster section. Hey, Douglas. Hey, and a happy anniversary with the Arsenic Lullaby celebrating its birthday this year. So, did you say it was 25? I can pull it up. The award nominated and oh yes, toaster type looking thing. Yes, among the weirdest gun type things in all of science fictiondom. Actually, it goes down. Weird. It goes down. Go back to that. The big part's in the back. I didn't realize that. So it goes like this. And it comes like this. And then it goes underneath. And then we got to redo this part because I messed that up. And then there's like a little lip. Now, I'm sure Ditko was just riffing. But I would trust P. Craig Russell to fix anything that editorial was like, hey, can you fill in the gaps here? 25 years is a huge accomplishment. It is gigantic. Just replace the toast with 2 hard drives. Well, there's so many different versions of it. It feels like ROM's design definitely evolved over time, depending on whoever the heck was drawing it, whether it was Sal, whether it was Ditko, whether it was, God, there were so many people that filled in on stuff too. There we go. It's got to go up like that, and down, and then over. And then this actually goes way over there. And it looks like there's some little lines in it. So let's Let's have some fun with it. Let's. What I'm going to do is just so that it visually fits in with the rest of the design is actually mirror what's on the back half of Rom's head back here. I'm going to just add some of those little chops. Just make sure that they. Let's put it right there. It doesn't compete with the visual design language that's already on the character. All right, we've mostly penciled in ROM. I've got to work on the dire wraith some. Let's pull that reference back up. There we go. Good old comics. I think it looks like it was on about its 100,000th comic print. There are some fun issues. I mean, there's a story with Forge that's really interesting. Um, the crossovers were just weird and fun. Was cool, or be duped into believing the toy was cool, however you wish to look at history. Um, I found it in, the dollar bins or whatever, and it was really those later P. Craig Russell Ditko issues that kind of got me to take note of what it was and then just read some of the issues. The last two issues are worth finding. There was like a big cataclysmic crossover. And then at the end, there are actual like character related consequences, which, I have no idea if the IDW did anything with that stuff later on. I mean, I met Chris Ryle, when he first started IDW, and maybe even a little before. And like it was his life goal to get his professional life's goal to get the rights to ROM. And it took him a million years to get it done, but he eventually got it. And I have to believe it's just because he was like a gigantic ROM fan, and that means he at least read the stuff. But yeah, there was a crossover with the X-Men that was really cool, with the dire wraiths. Um, and I say this relatively because I think that there is a sliding scale for mainstream comics that are produced, especially under a license. And I would say I found them enjoyable and fun. And when good creators were on it, they were professionally made and entertaining. And for 50 cents or a quarter, I found that they were worth it, especially the annuals. The annuals were always big, self contained, cosmic. If you like outer space robots and monsters and stuff, that's what they give you. And they were actually pretty violent. Now there are some terrible issues, but any book that was around that long, I think, is subject to having some duds. I was not the biggest fan of the Aiken and Garvey inking team on everything. Um, there are some issues of what was the book I randomly saw them on? Maybe it was Marvel Superheroes, the anthology book. It might have been that one where I don't know. It was just they have a really heavy style. It was on William Johnson. That was the penciler. God, was it Daredevil? I don't remember. No, that was Danny Bolinati. I like Danny Bolinati, but be that as it may. And I felt the same way about Micronauts actually. And I was never as into Micronauts, but I bought it sooner because everybody was losing their minds, like, "Oh, Michael Golden's Micronauts, you got to check that out." And I always felt that it was not. It didn't live up to the hype for me because I wasn't picking it up as it came out. Because Michael Golden became such a like, in my opinion, just a more interesting and better artist as time went on. Not to say that he wasn't very good at that time, he was, but, like, the hype around it was just massive, and I think I ended up, not paying a ton of money for those issues, but spending more than I would have ordinarily. I've read so much Michael Golden over the years of his output, and he hasn't done as many pages as you might think, but, like, if you're pulling the hits, you're pulling Avengers Annual, you're pulling, Bucky O'Hare, uh the Nam, the first, 7, 8 issues of the Nam. And that's what most people say about the Micronauts is they got it just for Golden's work, and it is good, but I just felt that he got so much better, like his other stuff. The G.I. Joe yearbook that he did, I just didn't feel like, maybe it was because it was not inked by Michael that I didn't, it didn't resonate with me as much, but what can I say? I have the first, what is it, 13 issues or whatever it is. I mean, there are certain books I've always wondered what his version would look like. The New Gods is one of them. That's a book where I would love to see with his use of scale. He did a Wolverine annual cover in the '90s when he was the art director at Marvel. And it had Red Ronin on the cover. Just the way that he's able to work with scale, I would just love to see that. Anywhere where we don't want to fill something in, we can put. See if there's a profile of these things. No, it's just this giant, like, slice of stuff on the top. It is 9:15 already. I think we're making pretty good progress for as long a day as today was. Douglas says, 10-year-old me reading Micronauts. Wait, so she is having sex with a centaur? Do I not understand what sex is? Because something's not right here. The Baron Karza with the horse half, is that what we're talking about? And for the dire wraiths, we just want crazy texture, just lots and lots of, like, bitter, sharp lines. Just dancing all around on these figures on the page. Actually, I think I missed a portion of these faces over here. I think they go out like this, and then there's like a thingy that comes down. And then there's the mouth. This needs to come out a little further. There we go. And you'll notice as I'm working that the drawing process just continues on. Like for me, penciling, inking, it's all part of the drawing process. It's not two separate disciplines. So like I'm just going to keep building on this and building on it. And hopefully by the time it's done, it is an interesting picture to look at. I think most of my we just got a bunch of new people. So if anybody doesn't know Douglas's work, he does a book called Arsenic Lullaby, and it's celebrating a big anniversary. And I'm sure you can Google it and find a website to buy stuff at. Gotta fix this one. This one's too stiff. So like mutant blood-sucking bird-like creatures. Try pulling it back this way some. And dropping the eye back a little further. Bigger shadow. It comes back like that. That's a little better. And then we can actually have this one's shoulder being in front of ROM. We can erase this garbage that's here. I'm not great at mailing things out either. That's why I actually had to close my online store until my Kickstarter is done. Stuff was just taking too long, and people were like very mad about it, even though I tried to be communicative, and I just couldn't keep up with it. So just closed it for now. That's why there's no place to contact me for commissions or anything. So until Undersea Hero is done, there is no room at the inn for that kind of stuff right now. Let's get this hand on Rom's leg here. So he's like pulling him down so that we know why he's in that pose. Storytelling. I'm actually going to pull this back a little bit. That's where that leg is. And then we need the other hand, actually, I think, to make it more believable that he's like pulling. Pull this forward and then this arm down. No, that arm's not going to work there either. Scales off. So I think we're actually going to have to draw this knee. We can have part of it be obscured by that other wraith, but And that's got to come in front and then cast a shadow, but we're going to have to get this knee in here, I think. And then we can put other stuff in the background. And pull that out. I think we can pull that out. And then we can add another character here. I'm thinking that this can almost be just a silhouette. An arm and then another layer. Hey, Michael. Good to see you. Oh, thanks. Yeah, we're just having some fun drawing some Space Knights and some Dire Wraiths and really just chunking out big, bulky shapes. That's really what we're focusing on. Trying to figure out how I want to handle. I think what I'm going to end up doing is making this into like a white smoke. That way we can have the classic ROM night sky and some white glimmers going on. I think that's what we're going to do. Hey, Michael, I honestly just haven't had time to order them. I've been running around like a crazy person, but I will definitely be hitting those up. And I actually think I have a gift card to the website that you sent me. So I think that as long as they have them, that will work out supremely well. So thank you. The old comic shorthand was XWS, which is means to put black ink with stars, XWS. There's going to be some cool, interesting shapes just from the way the black and the white's going to interplay with one another. And I don't fully know how it's going to work out, but I'm excited to see it. And I definitely need to work on these Dire Wraiths a little bit. Poison Elves. I never got into Poison Elves. It was just, I don't know. It was just, I'd heard of it. It was semi on my radar, but like that whole, like the Serious Comics Dawn, I read a little bit of. I didn't read much in the way of Aircell Comics. I read a few of their books because they went on and went to other companies, and I would go back and I'd find them. Yeah, let's add some white smoke here. That'll give us another visual thing that we can cut back into our creating layers, cut back into our composition, and we can draw fewer Dire Wraiths. I've already bit off more than I can chew here, I think. But if we add some streaky, mysterious white smoke bits coming up and serving our greater composition, we can cut into it a little bit. And of course, if I ever submitted this to whoever had ROM, they would say this is not a good cover. And I don't know, I probably would agree. Because we'd have to put ROM here, and then this would have to be slightly in front of it. Part of this would be obscured by the logo. So I don't know. I don't know if this would work as a cover. You've been able to see some of the bigger chunks. Now I have to get into a little of the nitty gritty. I'm going to get my blue pencil back out so that I can see what I'm doing. And just have some fun working on these big, weird shapes. These are strange shapes. They're cool. They're a cool design, I think. Yeah, I did. I had some friends who were into Poison Elves, but it was again another book that was just around forever, and just never jumped at the back issue bins. And of course, that book, and this is an interesting point, and I wonder if Douglas probably has run into this, but he's done a good job of keeping his stuff in print. Is that that book was really popular before trade paperbacks. So, like, if you wanted to read the story, the only way to do it was to track down the books. It was before things were immediately collected in trade every 6 months or whatever. Especially independent comics, like, so rarely did for a long time did independent comics get the omnibus treatment, shall we call it, for lack of a better term. See, for me, working in two different colored pencils makes it so that it is easier for me to just keep working. And when I get too much of one color, I can just grab the other and go back into it. And I know that that's probably like bad advice for, a young artist or whatever, but I've always drawn messy. Always, always. And it always just bothered the heck out of art teachers and editors and stuff. So yeah, Doug says that Poison Elves was just before trade paperbacks became the inevitable end result. Yeah, there were only so many indie comics that got that prestigious like release. Because even when they were bringing over like big Japanese titles like Akira, like it did not get a trade paperback. It got like a fancy print, like heavy duty paper printing with like a new color job by Steve Olive. You know, that was the prestige format. I'm trying to remember the first indie books I ever saw in trade paperbacks, and it was definitely the early Ninja Turtles that First Comics put out. Mike says he's using the FH pen. That would be that's a type of pit pen with like a plastic flexible tip. And he says it's great even with a very light touch. Douglas says he thinks the company that published it is now defunct, so I don't know who'd be able to collect them into a trade paperback. I would have to assume, since that the person who created it that passed away, that I am going to assume that it is not, just some random person being like, I have a whole collection and I want to make photocopies. Like, usually, if it's a Kickstarter, they shut that stuff down. That it's someone with the rights, whether it's a family or whatever. They decided to put out an edition. That's my hopeful. I'm being hopeful. Doug says slave labor books were the first indie books he can think of as a trade paperback. Yeah, the first ones I remember were the first comics Ninja Turtles, and then it was a big deal when Caliber did a collected version of The Crow. I remember that too. But we have reached 9:30, and I will show off that beautiful John Lucas cover again, just because it came in the mail the other day. He's on all the platforms. He's got a Patreon. This was his Undersea Hero cover. You can see the color version on the Kickstarter page and at the top of my profile on Facebook. I just love it. There's that sketch that I did. And here's our progress ROM. So this started as a blank piece of paper, and we got this far tonight, so I'm pretty happy with that. And thanks for hanging out with me tonight. I hope everybody has a beautiful weekend, and I'll see you at episode 93. Doug, if you want to be on episode 100, I'm trying to put together some people to more hang out and talk comics, and if people want to draw. So if you want to pop on, you're welcome to pop in. But what, 7 weeks, 8 weeks from now? But anyway, thanks everybody. I hope everyone has a good weekend, and I see folks at the Little Giant Comic Show on Saturday. So thanks again, and good night.